hope that you are having a wonderful time as always. Now, what have I got in today's program? Something very, very interesting. We've covered this subject before. Now, Ambazonia, a new nation within a nation. Those are the key words we've got to note. A new nation within a nation. You learn that as we go along. If you have not heard of the name Ambazonia, then you need to get used to it, and could soon be Africa's new nation if all goes well in a couple of years' time. Like South Sudan, the Ambazonian people have been fighting for independence from Cameroon for decades, although there is still an ongoing mediation between the two parties. But this has been going on for quite a long time. Now, a lot has been going on in this region of West Africa that the world and Africa are waking up to. With Ambazonian already having an interim government in exile and a liberation force on the ground, Africa and the world have to listen and accept their demands for independence from Cameroon. The question is, will it happen? That's what we're trying to talk about in today's program. With me in the studio today is Mrs. Marietta Njomi, a pharmacist by profession and a mother of four, who replaced Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako as the first female president of the interim government, of course in exile, of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Steve. Nice to see you again.
Okay. Also in the studio is another wonderful gentleman, Dr. Mana, the Secretary of State of Department of Education and Strategic Collaboration. He will explain to us as what that actually means and what kind of job that he does. Now, the first thing that I really want to know, when we were here last time, we didn't really talk so much about the history of Ambazonia, the struggle to break away and so on, because it's from the history that you start knowing why things are the way they are. We didn't cover this much when we discussed this last time. The history, is there something, because when people are listening to this, they compare Ambazonia now to Sudan. They may be miles apart, but could they have some kind of similarities? What is the history of Ambazonia? Why Ambazonia?
Okay, thank you very much, Steve, for that question. Why Ambazonia? If that question is related to the name Ambazonia, to the name specifically Ambazonia, that's because of the location. The name was actually proposed by one of our forefathers, who named it after a region of southern Cameroon called Ambaz Bay.
Okay.
So Ambaz Bay is where Ambazonia comes from. We prefer to be called Ambazonia because that's a name that's more meaningful to us, not a name that's been given to us by Europeans or anybody else. That's the name chosen by Ambazonians for Ambazonia.
All right. Anything else? If you prefer to be called that, why the difference between you and the northern people that is bringing the conflict? Is something
French Cameroon.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, historically, I think it's a known fact that when independence was being granted to African countries, French Cameroon was already a separate nation.
Okay.
With its independence being granted on a different date in 1960. So there are internationally recognized borders between southern Cameroon, Ambazonia, and French Cameroon, La République du Cameroun. So those are two complete nations. There is no mixing them up.
There's no mixing them up. They're two separate nations.
Yes.
Then why are they together? Why are they together?
Dr. Mana, you can carry on.
Yes, thank you, Steve, for the welcome. I'm glad to be here. As Madam President says, the Republic of Cameroon became independent one whole year before Southern Cameroons, and they were known as the Republic of Cameroon in French, or La République du Cameroun. They became independent on the 1st of January 1960. And that's well, if you go to the UN, that's the entity that's known as La République du Cameroun. And one of the issues at the moment is that they call themselves by that name, but still assume that that includes southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. And that's one of
the biggest problem we face especially we people who don't come from those West African region and so on, we are looking at it as there's a struggle going on at the moment to create another nation like Southern Sudan. The differences of opinion, and we're thinking, well, why can't they unite and become, as a country, something that there must be differences that you have in your countries that is creating that impact of saying we need to move on. We don't want to be with these people anymore. What is creating that friction if you've been like that for the last 40 years or so, something like that?
It's actually 62 years now.
62
because
years.
That's been going on since independence.
Okay.
Actually, Southern Cameroons joined the Republic of Cameroon, and I'm using joined advisedly because that was the term.
Actually, there was talk that it was part of Nigeria.
Yes.
It's part of Nigeria, and it was given to Cameroon.
I can actually talk about that.
Yeah.
There is actually also Northern Cameroons, another region who, in that plebiscite, chose to join Nigeria and became part of the Federation of Nigeria.
Okay.
So there are maybe three federal states of Nigeria which used to be Northern Cameroons. In that plebiscite, our forefathers chose to become independent by joining the Republic of Cameroon.
All right.
And that's where it started. Even in those days, there was debate about what the expectations were.
Yeah.
And the understanding was that it would be a federation.
Yeah.
And because of there were even then concerns about the differences in size and power of the two countries. So the understanding was that it would be a federation and nobody could change the form of the state unless both parties, both equal states, voted separately to change it.
Okay, I want us to move away from the history a little bit. Dr. Samuel Sako was replaced, was impeached, and we got a new president, and things are moving on smoothly. But is there something that can join the fact that people accept? Because I'm hearing a lot of voices, even before coming on air. Somebody was telling me, oh, no. They're still looking at Dr. Sako. Is there something happening within your organization, within your government, that is refusing to accept your presidency?
Right. So the question within our organization, as
within your within your
we are the interim government of Ambazonia, the interim government, which is well structured with its constitution.
Okay.
We, as a government, being led by myself and Mr. Vice President Dr. Harrison Abongwa, together with our cabinet members like Dr. Mana here, and other cabinet members scattered all over the world, in America, Africa, Europe, and so forth. We stand very firmly on respect of our constitution. We work towards ensuring that we have a leadership that is for the people, by the people. So when we talk about former presidents whom we've had were impeached by the people. And unfortunately, there are some members of the same clan who are still holding on to past times and finding it difficult to move on. If you look, the documentations are there. You saw the impeachment letters. You saw it. If you go on our television stations, you would have seen the announcements made, the people gathered, the Ambazonian people, the stakeholders gathered to make those decisions, because they want to build a country, an Ambazonia that is fair, that is transparent, that has accountability built in. They didn't see that in the previous government, in the leader of the previous government, and they said no. They are already exercising their right to democracy. The people stood up and they spoke quite clearly, and hence the impeachment and the change of government. And that's where we are.
Okay, what are the biggest problems now facing your cabinet? other than, of course, the struggle? What are the biggest problems?
I think before we talk about our biggest problems, let's talk about what the cabinet stands for and what it's been doing so well in.
The achievements,
yes.
In other words,
Yeah. So our cabinet is made up of 7 departments, and each of those departments has a Secretary of State that heads those, together with a deputy and a task force that helps to work for the liberation struggle, all on a voluntary basis.
All right.
So nobody gets paid for anything. I don't get paid either. Everything that we do, coming here, all the expenses are on us. We do not use money generated for the liberation struggle for ourselves. In fact, our cabinet members are so firmly opposed to resources going anywhere else that it's not meant for, that we have a policy, an accountability, an action policy, the AA policy, which states that any money that we raise, 90% of that has to go to
the liberation struggle.
100% of it goes to the liberation struggle. But 90% of that goes to meet the needs of the ARF, our Ambazonia Restoration Forces, who are defending those vulnerable families back home, who are being massacred by the La Republique military every single day, who are being harassed, who are being arrested and thrown into the dungeons of La Republique. We have family members in prison, unjustly put in prison, just because they are Ambazonians. That's how bad the situation is. Therefore, the young men and women that are strong and able decided to defend themselves. So it's our responsibility to make sure that they have the adequate resources to protect themselves, to defend the younger ones that can't do that. So that 90% goes to self-defense, and the other 10% for the humanitarian needs, because as you will recall, more than 1.5 million of our people have been forced to leave the Ambazonian territory because their homes have been burnt, because they've been raped, they've been kidnapped, all the human rights abuses are taking place.
We'll discuss that in a minute.
Let me just finish. So the other 10%, what I'm saying, everything that we raise, 10% of it goes to meet the humanitarian needs of the victims of the genocidal war. And because of that firm belief, Ambazonians have seen what we do and what we stand for, and are rallying behind us, giving us the support that we need. We need more Ambazonians to get over the disappointment of the previous government and come back on board to fight for this independence, because it's their country, it's our country. We have to fight. We own the right to our inheritance, our existence, and our destiny. It's our destiny to be free. So I am appealing to all Ambazonians to make sure that they do not use laxity or any excuses from the past to stop them from doing what is right, to stop them from doing what is right for the poor women, widows in the refugee camps, for the poor fathers who have lost their children, the old parents whom they've seen their children be massacred in front of them. Old parents, grandparents have been burnt alive in their houses. So this interim government has gone through quite a lot to put in place very robust institutions that are accountable to the people. Every single department is fruitful. Dr. Mana here, for example, is for the Department of Education and Strategic Collaboration. And I'm proud to tell you that our interim government has been using its second policy, which is a building bridges policy championed by Dr. Mana himself, and he will talk about that shortly. On the building bridges, the collaboration with any Ambazonian independentist entity that stands for the total and unconditional liberation of our country. So in as long as we can work on certain domains, whether it's diplomacy or whether it's fortifying the firepower on the ground, making sure that the ARF are adequately resourced on joint projects, whether it's for advocacy, whatever it is that a specific domain, a specific entity or individual who is an Ambazonian wants to collaborate with us, we have an open arm. we are prepared to work with any Ambazonian or any Ambazonian independentist. And notice I emphasize on the word independentist. It needs to be somebody or a group or movement that also stands for the independence of Ambazonia. Otherwise, it's pointless.
You've got so many movements. And this brings me to the question of the 28th of May 2019 Ambazonian political groups that met in Brussels. We want to know how far that one is going as a joint, because the last time when we discussed this, there wasn't really much. The declaration was signed, but is it working? That's the key thing. Is it working? Because without unity, it's going to be impossible to win this war.
I'll let Dr. Mana answer that question. That's right in his domain.
Well, yeah, there's no simple answer to that. I can't say yes or no, but there are indicators
that it's working,
that we're united. One of those is in recent pre-talks in Canada, because luckily one of the actually measures of our progress is that international community partners are getting involved, which is actually some progress in itself. Anyway, one of those occurrences was pre-talks in Canada, where a segment of our liberation movement met in Canada to discuss preliminary talks and set ground rules for possible talks with the Republic of Cameroon. And while I won't say everybody's united, because
these talks have been going on. They've been going on.
Oh yeah,
not to the same level of success we've seen.
Because even the African Union were tabling something connected to that, because some people are getting very concerned. The African Union president, one of these African presidents, brought this thing up. Of Sudan, in fact, and then the new elected president of Kenya brought this up as well and said, look, we need to address, once we address the issue of Sudan, we need to start addressing the issue of West Africa, of Cameroon, and very few people were, concerned about that. But they were saying, look, this thing has been overlooked for a very long time. So have you people approached the African Union to put your grievances forward as well? Because this would be very helpful, because if African Union is on board, then America and all the other European Union will listen. Because I feel as if you're fighting this war from here, but not on the continent. No?
Well, I think actually on the diplomatic front, as I said, we do have proof of our unity in the Canadian talks that I mentioned. And that when all the Ambazonian entities that turned up spoke with one voice.
You had a representation there?
Yes.
Well, we had some, but they spoke with one voice. Basically, they all want independence, and even those who were not represented also want independence. That's one unifying thing that every Ambazonian independence entity has in common.
It's going to be difficult.
So we do have that as a starting point.
President Bayer called all of you terrorists, and he says he doesn't talk to terrorists. And to find that he's now talking to you, his government is now talking to you at all, is interesting. He called, if I can quote him, and even when the issue of referendum was mentioned at one point, he said the people of Southern Cameroon don't actually need one.
Yes, and on that point, if I could say, our best advice is that we should plan for a referendum. I mean, obviously at the moment, the conditions for a referendum are that
that's what the African Union wants.
But it needs to be requested by Republic of Cameroon, because that's the precedent of previous referenda. They're usually requested by the state. We are a state legally, but at the moment we're not being treated as such, because most bodies still defer to La République, and that's the pretext, if I might use that, is this question of our unity. Now, what I'm saying is that all of us are united on being independent. And we, Ambazonians, will set the groundwork for working together to represent ourselves.
The French connection is something, again, which is, I'm
if
sorry.
I could just add to what Dr. Mana has just said. In terms of Ambazonians wanting our independence, that is not a question at all. The only thing that's different is that we may have different approaches in the way of prosecuting the liberation struggle. And that is no different to the United Kingdom or even French Cameroon itself. La République du Cameroon have differences in the way that they operate. And so that should never be used as a pretext to say they don't know who to talk to or that Ambazonians are not united. Ambazonians are clearly united. In our pre-talks that took place in Canada, Ambazonians were like this together. In fact, it was the French Cameroon, La République du Cameroon, who crumbled. The pre-talks were going really smoothly. French Cameroon, with the division within their government, decided to cause a massive diplomatic blunder publicly. You would have heard them deny engagement in the pre-talks in Canada, despite the fact that we all know that they were there, despite the fact that Melanie Joly, who is the foreign minister for Canada, made public statements about it. So you can see the level of deception and deceit from French Cameroon, La République du Cameroon. We have been willing to sit at the negotiation table with these people for decades. And we are still saying we are ready. The international community recognizes, now have opened the eyes to see that, in fact, the problem is not the Ambazonian people, because the Ambazonians, they've seen us come together. It's not just the pre-talks where we have shown that level of togetherness and collaboration. We have ongoing workshops being run by the United States Institute for Peace. We have been working with other international partners, so they know already. I can't say too much because some of these things are still ongoing, and I don't want to say too much of it.
The French angle is very, very interesting because from what I've gathered, the French could easily say this thing is going to happen, and Biya will have no choice, because
you mean French, Emmanuel Macron?
Yes. But the French are distancing themselves, and it's like, okay, you've gone so much with the English and the Americans, and you're not coming to us. Could this be a major issue that is affecting?
No,
they are not being participants into this negotiation?
Absolutely not, because Macron has been approached. Ambazonians in France have protested, they've handed in letters. Previously, I told you that I was responsible for coordinating Ambazonians in Europe and worldwide. We had country and regional coordinators all over in all the countries who carried out the diplomacy in their various countries. France was no different. So Emmanuel Macron knows exactly. I have tweeted him, I have contacted him too. They know what he knows, his government knows, but they are far too comfortable benefiting from the resources coming from Ambazonia. They need to stop what they're doing.
Maybe well, I don't know.
They are looking after their own interests. They're not looking after the interests of Ambazonia or even Cameroon, La République du Cameroon, because they are not. If they were, they would have known that the better thing to do is to make sure that the genocidal war comes to an end, and they start looking at negotiating with this interim government for our resources. We have plenty of resources. We have everything in place. So if they care about the dignity of our people being killed, if they care about the little babies that have been burned, shot at, they would actually do the right thing. I can tell you that if for just one day, the level of atrocity happening to our people was to take place in Paris just for one day, there will be an uprising. No French person will want to see any of the children being killed.
Of course not.
But yet, they think that they're allowing La République du Cameroun to continue the killing and all the human rights, gross human rights abuses with impunity. Shame on them.
It's one thing which we always don't discuss sometimes on air, and it could sound when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to, I attended the fundraising that you did a couple of years ago.
In 2019.
2019, which was a very good one, and a lot of money was raised. And also I'm looking at it and say, look, if there are other African countries, all other bodies that are helping with the struggle in terms of, because it's very, very difficult to maintain a struggle. President Museveni of Uganda will tell you that. It's very, very difficult unless you get a foreign body or a nation. Look at what is happening in what is this country? The Americans and the other ones are coming in to help Ukraine because it's difficult to maintain a war. How is there a problem in terms of, because if you are going to fund this war on yourself, it will probably take you years and years to achieve this. Is there a breakthrough somewhere? I know you might not tell me this on air, but seriously, otherwise this will go on forever.
Yeah. Well,
and that's why I'm looking more at an African angle. You as the president and the cabinet could say, let's approach so many African countries, because then it becomes easier for Nigeria, Ghana, or any other African country to say, you know what, we're going to support you, we're going to put this money down, we're going to give you weapons, we're going to give you this, and then at least this will rise, because if the West sees that Africa is supporting you, then the chances are going to be that you probably win this war. But have you looked at that African angle in terms of support, financial support?
We are still looking into that. Yeah. We, as you know, in terms of the length of time that President Paul Biya has been in power, more than 42, 43 years. Yeah. That's a very long period of time. And of course, we know that there have been networks where some people are scared to say or do the right thing. Yeah. However, we've seen this new wave within African leaders, thank God, because it's about time, where several African leaders are standing up against the French hegemony. They are standing up and saying that actually Africa is capable of controlling its own resources. Africa is capable of trading amongst themselves as partners, not going to subject ourselves to extortion by any Western country, especially France. So we are hopeful that with this new wave of Pan-Africanism and the realization to value self, that other African leaders will come to our aid. We need African leaders to, especially the younger generation.
They've been approached. The key thing is, have you approached them? Nah, you don't need that. You don't need to answer that. You don't need to answer that. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. I can understand. I can understand. Yeah.
I can say categorically that any African leader, president, who has got the right mindset would see within a blink of an eye that Ambazonia is a just cause. We are fighting justly, and it is in their interest to make sure that the peace and the genocide is stopped. So the peace, meaning Ambazonians, not just the La République du Cameroun peace, because they think that they can just lie to the international community that everything is normal and peace is returned. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about us gaining our independence, having justice being served by the perpetrator, La République du Cameroun, that has been killing our people with impunity. I'm talking about sanctions. African countries are capable of sanctioning La République du Cameroun. We don't need to always look up to the Western countries
if this
all
suggestion
the time.
If this suggestion is put to them, this is it. I think one of the things that I could probably think of that could be of much more help is that if somebody goes to the African Union and asked to address the African Assembly, African Union, this would be a very, very good idea. The Somalis did it, South Sudan did it. You go to the assembly and you address the assembly.
We did have people, yes, we did. Yeah. The leaders, part of the leaders who were abducted in Nigeria, we had established links with the African Union. But the African Union were so dormant, they were not quick enough to prevent this genocide, because in fact, if the African Union had acted sooner, the genocide would not be at the level where it is. So I think we need to hold our own leaders accountable.
Okay. Now, women are playing a massive role in this, and as a gentleman, Dr. Mana, I'd really want to know where is this emphasis of women? You even have a woman president here, and there's so many women into the organization. I got impressed when I attended the ceremony, and the 2019 ceremony, and I could see that the men are taking a back seat, and this is something which is gone beyond our cultures even at the moment. Is there a population problem, or is this you're breaking?
No. There's not a population problem. Ambazonia actually is just a country where talent is what counts. So Madam President is good enough to be president. She's the president.
Of course.
It's not. She's not a woman president. She's the president. Now, if I step back a bit on the African Union, we do have approaches to the African Union, specifically to the African Commission, because way before this struggle started, renewed 7 years ago, several southern Cameroonians went to the African Commission to sue La République du Cameroon for human rights abuses and marginalization. And they got a judgment in Banjul in favor of southern Cameroons, basically, which advised La République to carry out reforms and to make concessions.
How about the human rights courts in The Hague? This is another place which the interim government should go and actually present all the evidence, because if you do this, the next time you're going to see that some of these people they are sanctioned, and they can't even travel any other part. It's happened in Zimbabwe, it's happening in Uganda at the moment. You need to go there as well. And
that's not off the table. That card is still on the table, but for the time being, we would like to minimize the killing of our people by working for, quite quickly on getting a negotiated settlement, which is why we appreciate the French Cameroon members of cabinet or members within the government who see that what the Cameroon government is doing is wrong, because I can tell you that members of their government recognize that what is happening in Ambazonia should not be happening. So I want to appreciate those members of the BR regime who actually are being honest and they recognize that. But more needs to be done. With the Banjul ruling, it's the implementation of it that the African Union should be following up on. They've not followed up on it.
It should have gone internationally then, to the International Criminal Code.
But at the time, we had not had a genocidal war declared upon us by Paul Biya, and people were not being killed indiscriminately the way that they are now. We didn't have millions of people displaced, internally displaced, and leaving to go to other countries just for their safety. So we find ourselves in a place where there are lots of issues to handle simultaneously, and they are being handled. But the real priority right now is to get the killings and to safeguard the lives of our people. We know that even 30 years later on, criminals are brought to justice.
Of course.
Paul Biya, even though he's aging, we will still hold him accountable for the crimes that he's allowed to be committed against innocent civilians. That's including women and children that have absolutely nothing to do with anything. They have been targeting innocent civilians because their military is just, what words can I use?
You can't find the words, because I went through that book, by the way, the book that I received from you last year regarding I think the women of what, the
Echoes of Women's Years.
Echoes of Women is it's a very, very interesting book.
Yes.
It's a very interesting book, and interesting in the sense that there are things which are discussed in there which shouldn't really be in print at all, and with a lot of honesty around. And I believe this is something you can take to the UN. If it can't, African Union can't take it, then the UN has to take in this, because these are voices of the people. These are voices of the people. It comes to mind that maybe the people who are supposed to be taking these voices to the right places are not doing their job.
We are in contact with the UN. We are in contact with the United Nations.
High Commissioner for Refugees, or
we have contact with, of course, with UNHCR, because they have to meet the needs of our refugees, which they're not getting much support. Funding has reduced, so the international community needs to still find ways of supporting. As you know, because of this Ukraine war, everything else just seems to be non-existent. All the suffering of the rest of the world wrongfully is being ignored or minimized. So African people, we need to make sure that we can actually support our own people as well, because if we don't, nobody else will. That's what we're seeing. And we need to wake up and rise up to the fact that we only have ourselves to save. Yes, we are in contact with the United Nations, but they're dragging their feet. We speak with the UN Department for Peace, UNDPPA. They are fully aware of everything.
You've been at, we did a demonstration to the Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth is aware of it. We've written there. I have been in there with meetings, physical meetings with them. We've made presentations. Every entity, every institution that needs to know about this knows about this, Steve. They know about it. We have taken it everywhere.
Yes, sorry, Steve. I just actually want to appreciate you raising all of those points, because speaking about the UN, we actually have Fongoji Dinka as and other previous fighters who took the effort of going to the UN to present documents and get answers from the UN. And for Ngozi Dinka, for instance, there's a video of him somewhere, which you could find, where he explains that he went to the UN and got the UN officials to clarify to him that there's no union agreement between the Republic of Cameroon and Southern Cameroon. And that because in 1989 they changed their name back to Republic of Cameroon. That basically meant that Southern Cameroons came back into existence.
It came back to existence.
In 1984 when that decree was signed by President Biya. So just on that, I mean,
the legal arguments are very strong.
And we've been to nearly everybody that you've mentioned. We've been to African Commission because they did a ruling.
You see, the reason why I go through all this, because I've been with the Sudanese, and the Sudanese, when they were having that war with the Northern Sudan, and to try and break away, the system is almost the same. The forces were on the ground. There was a lot going on. But then the Sudanese made too much noise. They were almost everywhere. In my country, the demonstration, because Uganda is just, they're north of the border. And there were so many refugees there in Uganda and in Congo. But also this way, there was so much going on through other bodies, with they themselves making a lot of noise. And I've seen Eritrea, and during this war that has been happening in Ethiopia, we saw the demonstrations here in London and in Australia. There was a coordination of demonstrations that took place. People of Tigray who were fighting Ethiopian government at the time. And there was a huge demonstrations which I attended several times here. These noises created a voice, one big voice that said, okay, the big boys, the Americans, the British, they started listening. I said, hey, I think we either put our stick out or something. You better do something about it. Now, African Union did something about the war in Ethiopia, and it's no longer there. I'm looking at all the angles, and I'm thinking maybe you haven't covered the bigger picture to ensure that he's going to listen if the big boys start speaking, or even Africa as a whole starts questioning. Is there an area that you feel? Is it money? Is there something?
Yeah, definitely money. Yeah. Funding is an issue.
Okay.
We need funding for not just our refugees and the internally displaced. We need money to fund the war. Ukraine gets a whole lot of money, ammunition just given to them, everything just shipped over to them. They get everything. We need a similar kind of support from the international community. I am not going to shy away from requesting it. We need that because we have the right to defend ourselves.
Of course, of course.
La République du Cameroon has had those resources available. They even used helicopters that US government had given them to fight Boko Haram in the far north. Okay, that's what they used to fire live bullets at protesters, Ambazonian protesters, innocent women who just walked out with peace plants, with a peace plant, with a wrapper just wrapped around them, had absolutely no weapons. They fired live bullets at my people, my mothers, my grandparents, my sisters, my aunties, my uncles, my brothers and sisters. Do you understand?
Yeah.
That is what French Cameroon, Paul Biya's regime does with resources that are given to them. They don't go fight the enemies. They were not fighting Boko Haram with what was given to them. They were using that to kill innocent people who were out protesting. Protesting. That's a human right to protest.
Okay.
But Paul Biya's government thinks that it's okay to use resources that are given to them to kill innocent civilians.
Alternative methods that can be used to bring about peace in the area. Is there any? You've tried the Canada now, as you're talking about. Is there any other? Because if you have ECOWAS, for example, the West African, economical. These are some of the things that I believe somewhere along the way, if you sit down and talk to these people and say, hey, listen, this is what is going on here. Somewhere along the way, there should be something which, as cabinet members, when you sit down in your cabinet and you're discussing this issue, have you exploited all the necessary roads that can prevent what is happening?
I think we may need to revisit some of the roads because understandably, with the previous administration, there were some issues of lack of follow-up.
Okay.
So if inroads would have been made, they didn't progress. So rightfully, yes, we need to revisit. Unfortunately, it might mean that some people might think, oh, you didn't do anything last time, so why should I bother again? But we are hoping that the international community would see that they still need to do it to save lives and not look at the leaders or the administration that was there previously, because that administration was gotten rid of for a reason. There was a reason why that administration was gotten rid of.
How about the issue of using famous people? You got a couple of famous Cameroonians, you got a couple of famous people that are known to be championing issues. This is another thing, but some of these famous people have to be approached first. The footballers, the actors, because those people can carry a very huge voice if they come out there. This is another thing that you need to, because if they move out, if they move in, Adris Eba is another very good character who, if you approach him properly and said, okay, let's
Who was that?
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba.
Oh yes, love him.
He's a very good actor.
Yes, he's amazing.
Yeah, and these are some of the causes. If someone approaches him, you could maybe.
I would write that down.
Yeah,
I definitely would love to approach him.
Yeah, because these people carry a huge voice. Now, to be honest with you, somebody asking about Ambazonia in East Africa. If I hadn't been a presenter probably somewhere, I probably wouldn't have known what Ambazonia, which nation is this. But when Sudan was having problems, it was everywhere in the news.
Yeah, selective coverage.
The thing is constantly keeping all this thing, and these are areas that are filled. That
if you recall, the Norwegian Refugee Council has every year produces a report where it categorizes the different crises in different parts of the world. And the crisis, I would say crisis in quotes, at the time when this started was rated as the first most neglected crisis in the whole world. Okay, that was based on the fact that in terms of communication, in terms of media coverage, it was non-existent. It was very little. You've just made it absolutely crystal clear. And also, well, in fact, I should say thank you to Omega TV because you are doing just that. You are giving us the voice. You're giving us a platform to alert the world of what's happening. But the Norwegian Refugee Council uses 3 criteria. The media being one of them. There was very limited coverage and still continues to be. Funding, you've talked about funding. The International Community for Red Cross is now supporting the IDPs on the ground in southern Cameroon, and we are thankful to them for that. We appreciate the work that they're doing, and of course, the political will to get a solution. We've touched on that as well. In the past, there wasn't a political will to really be behind Ambazonia and support it, but now we are grateful that after the Swiss-led process that was initiated when you talked about Team Ambazonia coming together to have those talks with them. After La République messed that up as well, we've had Global Affair Canada, so the Canadian pre-talks, which we mentioned at the start of this discussion, is proven to be they're resilient and they have the political willpower to find a solution. So we are thankful to the Canadian government and their partners, because they do have partners that they work with in close collaboration. They have friends, international friends, that are supportive of this process.
The main issue is another issue which the Sudanese use. I think to be giving you all the ideas instead of finding the ideas from you. No, the main issue, the main issue of what Sudan used is the people of northern Cameroon probably don't even know what's happening in southern Cameroon.
They know?
No. You may think that they know, but sometimes they might not. Because when the issue started coming up, as soon as the southern Sudan, the war was going on, the propaganda of the government was going on in northern Sudan. But something happened that opened up. Now we have the internet, we have smartphones, we have everything. So when things started opening up, suddenly the people of northern Sudan realized, hang on a minute, this is what is going on. This is what the government version is, but this is the other version of it. So slowly, even demonstrations started taking place in the north. I said, no, what you're doing over there is wrong. So I'm thinking it can be a catalyst in a way if it's approached from an angle of knowledge, in a sense that you keep printing and showing what's happening in the north, so that this can also have an effect to the government over there. They will feel uncomfortable and maybe things will change. But these are angles I'm looking at. Call me in as one of your...
we should.
And pay me as an advisor.
Actually, Steve, just on one point, the federation was West Cameroon, which is southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, and East Cameroon, which was the Republic of Cameroon.
Yeah.
So when we say Southern Cameroons, the other Cameroon isn't Northern Cameroon.
All right.
It's French Cameroon.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, as Madam President says, they do know, because we have prominent people in French Cameroon who regularly talk about it and disagree with what is going on.
Well, I could say this way. Being a Ugandan and having seen the Museveni war and having seen the propaganda by then the government in Uganda, and also having seen the Idi Amin, when Idi Amin was in power, there's a big propaganda going on. He was losing the war to Tanzania, but the newspapers, the TV stations, everything was telling us that Idi Amin was winning. So by the time we realized the war had reached the capital city, some people were going about their business, believing what the government was saying. But the BBC and all the other people kept us informed of what was going on. So all I'm saying is that these structures are there. Now, because they're there, you may think that they know, but what do they know?
Oh yeah.
So try and put something in as a government.
I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. In fact, everything that you've said absolutely makes sense.
Okay.
And it's what we have to consider. Because personally, I'm open to learning all the time.
Yeah.
So even if we've approached the UN or the AU or Human Rights Watch or whatever organization once before, doesn't mean we're not supposed to come back to them.
Of course,
because if something new has come up and we need to remind them, we're supposed to do all of that again. Because it's our life, it's our nation. We cannot leave it just because we've started fighting for it once. We need to keep fighting it until we win.
Of course.
So even if we've been to the UN or any other bodies and approached whoever, we have to keep approaching them. We have no option at all.
The youth projects that you discussed this with the charity last time when we were talking about your charity. I just want to know how far the charity is going, and also something about the youth, which is not always being followed up, because there is a tendency to use men and others, and you forget that the youth who are coming up have a bigger role to play in terms of helping to make, because they're the next generation that's going to fight this war. But if it's not embroidered in their head, what is your government trying to do in terms of keeping them abreast with the, not just the information, but being part of the struggle as well?
For the youths who are in what we call ground zero, who are actually in Ambazonia, they see the war every day. They are the ones that are wanting to defend their families. So they are very well aware of why they're fighting. They know why they're fighting and why it's important to defend their territory. The youths who have managed to escape with older family members to Nigeria, for example, they are in the refugee camps. They know why they've had to leave their homes, because they've seen their properties burnt. They've seen so much suffering and killing right at their tender age. So those youths there, because they are opportune to go to school, it's important that they gain a good education. Ambazonian people are so smart. Our children are very intelligent. We need to give them the opportunities to gain a good level of education, because we want leaders that are educated, leaders who can reason logically and come to make right decisions. So as per my charity, you would know that Friends of British Southern Cameroons has over the years been supporting the victims in the refugee camps, some in prison, who have just been arrested. So we've been supporting with educational resources. We've been supporting, Dr. Mana is the Secretary of State for Education and Strategic Collaboration. So together with our representatives, what we call the HSS representatives in Nigeria, we've put together programs that support them. So we are now in the summer holidays. So by the time the summer holidays are over, we will provide resources for them to get pens, school books, uniforms, anything that they need in the refugee camps, because that will ensure that future Ambazonians are getting the right education, so that they would be able to fight and defend themselves later on. The charity also has been working to help pregnant women, women that have got sick kids, women that need to go to the hospital, take their kids to the hospitals, help with projects to help them to be more sustainable, because sustainability is very important. You can't keep giving money to people every single day. The money will run out. So it's important to have sustainable development. So being able to just rent land for them to do their own farming, grow their crops, sell it, then they can buy what they need for their children. So the charity Friends of British Southern Cameroons, which will appreciate your support. Everyone is, you know, if you're touched by the ongoing war in Ambazonia and you want to help those people, you can support through Friends of British Southern Cameroons. But equally, as a government, we do have a website called Onmask. Onmask the genocide in Southern Cameroons. We have a platform there where you can donate for a specific project, whether it's for sanitary towels for the girls in the refugee camps or the IDPs, if it's for education, whether it's for food, whatever it is, it's medical support. You can support it any way that you want on the Onmask website.
I had a privilege to have a chat with the former president, Samuel Sako, briefly during the 2019 ceremony. I was meant to interview him, but the interview never took place. But a brief chat, and I was saying, look, you've done a huge fundraising here. Now, is there any opinion on how, not just to spend the money, how this money can easily be used to generate more money? And he was suggesting, oh, it's an idea that is existing. We're having to invest in other areas to generate money.
Is that what he told you?
To generate money, invest into something else. This was a private conversation anyway. I'm bringing it up now because it was at the time. If they're investing, because I'm looking at it and saying, look, you're getting money, people supporting and all that, and the money is going to support that. But it could also be if you have £1 million, for example, you have £2 million, and you use maybe half of that to put in a bank on a high interest account or something and get money back, or invest into another project somewhere, so that you have that continuation. Because there will be time when there won't be any money coming in. You know, people, the world is going through a recession at the moment. Now, I saw it as a point which was quite interesting, and I don't know whether your current government has something like that as an idea as well.
Well, Steve, I can tell you that I appreciate you saying...
There was no money.
No. I appreciate you saying that to Ambazonians for your own self, because that's a discussion that you had. Because the difficulty that Ambazonian people have had is the lack of accountability for funds that were that they contributed to.
Well, so this was a suggestion. He was suggesting if the money comes, because ideally when I saw what was coming in, I said, look, if this is coming in and it's a lot, then surely you don't expect it to be coming in every day. There has to be something that you say, okay, this is management, but at the same time, if we have a lot, if we have more than that, I think let's put this on. What can generate something could give us quick money, so that at the end of the day, if there's nothing coming in, at least the government is still running.
So what I can say to you is that from that period where we had huge sums of money coming into the liberation struggle, people did not see the results of their contributions. Part of the impeachment was because of embezzlement and a lack of proof of what that money was being used for. So that resulted to a lot of distrust amongst Ambazonians, complete distrust. People were just so angry and frustrated, all of us, because we did contribute massively, but we saw no results whatsoever. So we wish we had that abundance of resources, because we would have put those resources to good use as per our accountability and action policy, the AA policy that I talked to you about, the 90-10% policy, 0 for diaspora leadership. Now, because of that, we need more support from big people that you know. So you need to let us know who you know to give us support. Because listen, our Ambazonia Restoration Forces have actually been making lots of progress in terms of their knowledge and their ability to fight the enemy, La République du Cameroon, with limited resources. They are doing massively, they are doing a great job. The number of La République du Cameroon casualties is increasing every month. Okay, there are some months that you get more than 60 of them.
Okay. But you've got my idea. If the money comes in, could this be as a part of the investment as well?
This is our principle. There will be no way that we will keep money because we have limited resources. We can't justify taking a chunk of our money for investment.
No, if it's a lot, I can understand. But if it's less,
there's no way it can be enough.
It cannot be enough. Because every single day, the ARF, our Ambazonia Restoration Forces, need something. Every single day, our refugees need something. Just a couple of days ago, I can't even talk about it without getting emotional. There are women that are in pain from childbirth, losing their babies because they haven't got resources to go to the hospital. And this is another thing. You think that refugees have the right to medical care because they should get taken care of by the host countries. That doesn't happen with our refugees. Why is that? UNHCR needs to step up. A lot of our refugees are being neglected. They haven't got the basics. They haven't got basics, food, medical care. Can you imagine that pregnant women are being left alone to give birth at home and people are losing their babies? Somebody is paralyzed, a woman is paralyzed because of inadequate health care. Do you understand? Why? Would that happen in this country?
Of course.
Would that happen to any refugees in this country?
I don't think so.
And if that happens to a refugee, they're already away from home, and that's bad enough. So find yourself in that sort of dire medical situation, away from home. You don't have family there.
No support
it's
whatsoever.
Just desperation. So the idea that there would be any money left to invest, it's just a paradox.
Well, maybe he said so as a kind of if we got enough, because there is that element of saying, look, if people are supporting you, they probably reach a limit, because it's not going to happen all the time. If you do a fundraising today and then you don't do, you do another one next week, you won't be getting the same resources all the time. So
that's correct. That's why for instances like for the refugees, you borrow the word invest in sustainable projects like pig farming, where they can generate income.
I was looking for.
So that is perfect. That's what we need. That's what we are working towards.
They can generate their own income.
That's right.
That's different from us in the diaspora.
Maybe that's what
that's different from a president saying
maybe that's what he meant.
That's not what he meant. Because we actually have seen what he meant by that. That's why I looked at you with much interest, because in fact Ambazonians later realized that a lot of the money that was being contributed for the liberation struggle never went down to the Ambazonia Restoration Forces on the ground. Refugees were still suffering. My charity was having to always try to meet with the needs of this, because the money that we thought we were contributing towards the liberation struggle was being invested in bitcoins and what is it, CoinZoom?
Listen, you had a government. That was a government. You get the point. That was a government. So it's a collective responsibility, not just one man, Samuel Sako. I think the collective responsibility meant his entire cabinet. You sit down with all that, because if any of them could have known what was going, maybe would have resigned. People would have stepped aside and said, no, we can't touch this because of this. Because it's a collective responsibility, as you are.
So do you now understand what I said? A small clan of people that are holding on.
Yeah,
so you can now understand where that comes from. So you have to have conspirators. You need to have people who would to make it. You can't do that unilaterally. It's not possible.
Now, have you put a safety net in place now? Nothing like that will happen with your government.
Absolutely not, because we have absolute transparency in our government. I don't touch the money. Secretaries of state, if they need money for their department, they need to put in a requisition form to the Department of Economy and Finance, okay, and that gets looked at by myself and the Vice President. If it's a big project, the cabinet must discuss it. If it's a little thing like, oh, this woman is dying, she needs X, Y, and Z, the Secretary of State for Health Service and Social Services puts in the requisition, and it needs to be done very quickly. For things like that, of course, you need speed. But we do have that was a very bitter lesson to learn, Steve, and it can never happen again. I felt the pain of it. We all felt the pain of it, because like I said, we were contributing heavily in our liberation struggle, and to see that it amounted to nothing, I do not want anyone to ever experience that ever again. And so we have vowed and we condemn any movement or leaders that take advantage of people's money and do not do what it's meant to do.
Okay,
we are completely against that.
Now, your past experiences are extremely very, very important, especially you as the president, for having gone where you went, Deputy Secretary of the Department of Education, UK coordinator, the regional. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wow, you've been to places, you've covered quite a lot. And your knowledge is second to none as far as this.
That's why I can talk to you about diplomacy, because I have physically been for diplomatic missions in different countries in Europe. So when I say that we have approached people,
but is there something in voices there that don't listen? Is there something
part of their challenge? Part of the difficulty is the fact that. Say now, for example, Ambazonians know that the leadership has changed, yet you have people clinging on to power. People, these same people going to these same offices, causing confusion. Do you understand?
Yeah, I get you.
That is what is actually stalling the liberation struggle. That's what's destroyed the progress of the liberation struggle. But you know what? We have always said this is a God-ordained liberation struggle, and God is the watchman of our nation. All those people that are doing those things, or who have been doing those things, they are being held accountable. God is taking care of them, and Ambazonian people know. So the international community have now realized who they need to speak to. They know exactly who they need to speak to. So it's a bit embarrassing, actually. You even still bringing up these questions about former presidents who are still trying to parade themselves as president. It's very embarrassing.
I'm going to bring that up, because when it comes to you being approached a number of times and you being given informed, in my field as a journalist and a broadcaster, I get all this information. And when you get this information, you have to balance it. And that's why in most of the debates we do, we balance. We said, okay, she said this, he said this, he said. We have a saying in my tribe that you can't listen to, you have to listen. When
there are two sides to every story.
There are two sides to every story.
Indeed.
Now, if you hear one side of the story and then you make your judgment, sometimes it's not fair on the other side. So that is why when I bring it up, I'm addressing it from those angles. Okay. How do you see the future of Ambazonia now?
Dr.
How do you see Dr. Mara? How do you see the future? You see a massive win somewhere in the future, and you will have a brilliant government in years to come. How do you see it?
Well, Ambazonia is full of very talented people.
Okay.
Our young people are almost on a daily basis coming up with inventions, if I call them those, from nothing. They will design engineering stuff from scrap that they find. A lot of them are winning computer science competitions. So we have a bright future of our young people being able to integrate into the future competition for jobs in AI, for instance, and engineering and computing. Now, at the moment, we're going through the same thing that every liberation struggle goes through.
How are you going to keep them Ambazonians? Because one thing is, if they're here in the UK, if they're in Nigeria, if they're in Ghana, and so on, if there isn't a proper structure in place, they will eventually be Nigerians. They will eventually be British. And it's going to be, I find it difficult keeping my 16-year-old daughter from being to remain a Ugandan with the cultures and everything. How is that struggle going to make sure that they remain Ambazonian regardless of the identity thing? Is it there in your educational structure?
Well, we have our own, we have an identity which has
but you teach it. That's the point I'm trying to say.
It's part of our curriculum.
It's part of your curriculum.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, the talents I was talking about are not based in the diaspora. I was mentioning people specifically who live on ground zero. That's where those talents are from. I mean, obviously, the ones in the diaspora are showing the same.
Yeah, but the ground zero with the studies like that, when there's a war going on, there's a lot of disruption there.
So Dr. Mana, I'm very proud to say that Dr. Mana's department, his team, has put together the Ambazonian curriculum. So that curriculum, which is being spread on ground zero to community schools, our Ambazonian community schooling, because education is very important. Our kids cannot go for prolonged periods of time with no education.
Isn't this coming from the north as well, from the Cameroon government?
It's our curriculum. We've decided a curriculum.
So they're no longer having the same curriculum like the one in the rest of Cameroon?
French Cameroon schools have been banned in our territory.
So
those schools are not, our restoration forces are making sure that they don't, they're not running. And if they are running, it's very precarious. It's at their own risk. But we have our curriculum, which we are sharing with our Ambazonian teachers to provide this community schooling for our children for the time being. Now, what Dr. Mana was highlighting was the genius. We have several geniuses, but there are some children in Ambazonia whom, despite all the challenges, despite the war situation, you will see the creativity. Scientific geniuses, I mean real engineers, putting together things from scrap, actually very functional. For example, when during COVID period, they created a hand washing, an automatic hand washing system. So you don't have to touch and spread disease, the COVID virus. They've created self-opening taps, bins, all sorts of different things. Helicopters. I mean, this child is just pure genius. And just imagine what that child would come to when well nourished and supported. That's just one child. There are many others. So, like I said, Ambazonians are very smart, very, very intelligent. We have a very bright future because we have the intellectual capacity to build our nation. We will have the financial capacity also to build our nation. We want an Ambazonia where we have freedom of speech, of course, because all the things that we have said no to, all the things that we do not want from being with La République du Cameroun, we are going to make sure that we reverse those and have the best, because Ambazonian people, after all these years of war, deserve the very best. We own the right to our inheritance, our existence, and our destiny. And the power is in our hands. We will make it happen. It doesn't matter how long it takes, but we are determined. And also for the records, despite all these different movements, remember Team Ambazonia is a collection of 8 movements. So you can already see that Ambazonian people are able to work together, they're able to collaborate. Team Ambazonia is a coalition. Ambazonian Coalition Team, that's what ACT stands for.
Right.
So we have Team Ambazonia, ACT or Team Ambazonia, which currently is being chaired by our interim government.
All right.
Team Ambazonia works on a rotatory chairmanship. So every 6 months, one entity, one of the independent entities within Team Ambazonia is in charge.
You rotate.
Yes,
the leadership.
we rotate the leadership, and that's working quite nicely. At the moment, like I said, our interim government is in the chair. So Dr. Mana and our Secretary of State for Defense and our Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs together are running Team Ambazonia, and they're doing a great job. We will send you an invitation to what we call a fireside chat, so that we can update each other on what all the different movements are doing, what the current state of affairs are within our liberation struggle, and what hopes we have that everybody needs to be part of. We want this community spirit. We are rebuilding the community spirit, one strong Ambazonian spirit. And so I will send you the invitation. You are more than welcome to come and attend. Bring some guests as well. Yes. But I mean, like, seriously, the Ambazonia that we are working hard for, because sometimes we don't go to bed. We sleep 3-4 hours because we are in a war. It's a liberation war. We're sacrificing a lot, and we're not sacrificing for nothing. We want an Ambazonian that we can be proud of, so that we can say, yes, we made this happen. We have secured the safety of future generations. We want a country where you can go to the hospital and you will be tended by knowledgeable and well qualified, experienced doctors and nurses, not people that just are in that position because they bribed someone to get a certificate, or they bribed someone for entry into the medical school, and yet they have no knowledge of what they're doing.
It's very interesting and very good to hear of the future that you're looking at. It's good in words, it's good everywhere. But when it comes to the reality itself, in the sense that you have the tribal issue, which is affecting most of Africa, where the tribes are concerned, and where somebody comes from. Where do you come from? In Africa, that is a very, very big
Not in Ambazonia, Steve.
Well,
listen, in Ambazonia, we celebrate.
You're not in power yet, in a sense that
yes,
the Republic, the government has come in and the country is standing. The moment the country stands, all I'm trying to say, I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm looking at the loopholes here, and I'm saying, if these loopholes are covered when you're still an interim government, and you say, this is how we're going to act, because
we are doing that already, because the biggest problem in being with La République du Cameroon was that discrimination, the discrimination that was so rampant. And people get given jobs or opportunities if they are from the same tribe as President Paul Biya, for example. You know why I'm
saying that? Sudan, they were together when they were fighting this war.
But we have far too many tribes in southern Cameroon. We have too many tribes in southern Cameroon. As soon as the war was over, the main key tribes, the things that, in fact, it's almost just recent, when I sat down with him and I said, look, what has been happening? Everything went well, you won the war. Then the internal kind of structure, because they didn't build it when they were, like now, you need to build it now so that it's in place. Ambazonians know that we are, look, I, for example, I'm from the southern zone, My husband is from the northern zone. So what does that make our children? They are complete Ambazonians.
I understand that.
Ambazonians, we know that we're together, we only have each other. Whether you're from the northern zone or if you're southern zone, you are Ambazonian. it doesn't matter. And in fact, we have far too many tribes for that to even work.
Yeah.
We will, Dr. Mana said it earlier, Ambazonia is built on meritocracy. You will only get what you've worked hard for, what you deserve, not because you're from this tribe or from that tribe, or not because you're from Madam President's tribe. Absolutely not. I would say absolutely no. Even if it's my own family members, if they don't qualify for it, they're not getting it.
Listen, I like your defense very, very well. But let's hear from you. It's being skeptical because I've seen it in Sudan, and I've seen it in Ethiopia, and I've seen it and I've also partly seen it in my own country, in Uganda. When it is, I mean, it's just like you find lions fighting together to get the food. The moment the food is at the table, they start fighting each other. Yet they could say, okay, look, you take a leg, I take a, but they fight each other until the strongest one eats the biggest portion of the food. Now, that has been Africa's problem, but it can be done if you now, as the president and the others, can sit down and come up with a very crucial plan, which is working now in exile. It's working and it's over, and say, look, this is what is going to happen. This is the principle. These are the constitution which you are going to follow, and so that you don't wait until you reach the power.
No, we're not doing that. We have things in place already. We already have a vision of how we want our healthcare system to be. We know how we want things to be.
Can I have a word, Dr. Mana?
Yes.
You get my point anyway.
Absolutely.
I mean,
who wouldn't get it if they're in this liberation struggle? That's why we're in the liberation struggle.
I know.
So actually, to be honest, one of the challenges is what you're saying.
Exactly.
These things happen all the time. We have
because
protocols
you see,
in place.
Dr. Sako that you replaced, if I'm sorry to keep going backwards on this, because the people who are running left and right are like, okay, they probably would hear me anyway. There have been cronies and so on, and then there have been others, and so the structure, that's how Africa's biggest problem has been. And I'm trying to say here that because the people who come in at the beginning, they don't put the structure in place. This is where Africa is. In Congo, Uganda, Tanzania, and so even Ghana. The structures were never put in place. From countries where the structures were put in place have never had problems, like Tanzania, Namibia. The structures are there in place already.
From our hard lessons, we actually do have the action and accountability. That means we're accountable for any contributions we get. That's a structure that's in place. It's nothing to do with anybody's preference. And we're also working on building bridges policy, which actually ought to help in getting all Ambazonians to work together. And my personal belief is that everybody should realize that the country works better if it's efficient and transparent. Then you get rewarded for your effort. And that's what we want for all Ambazonians. All our future generations should benefit from their genius and rise according to their merit. And if that doesn't happen, we will know that we will suffer, because our country will not develop. We'll become poor if we're not.
The reason I agree with you in what you're saying, because you're saying so from a personal point of view, which I agree, and from my personal point of view, I would probably say the same thing. But what I'm more or less looking at is a constitutional document which can easily be written down and followed, because then that puts the structure in place. So that at the end of the day, if there is an argument, you say, hang on a minute, this is what we said.
We do have an interim constitution.
So that becomes a much more what to be followed there.
So I think we appreciate what you're saying. We do have an interim constitution. We're going to comb through that and see where we can make sure that that's put in, but we will need to have all stakeholders gathered to have that constitutional amendment. So that's a fair point, because to be honest with you, Ambazonians are so united that tribalism has no room in our nation.
They're united because they have a common cause now.
No. Even before that, there are some people that have been trying to bring forth their tribalism as a way of causing division amongst Ambazonians to weaken the liberation struggle. And we have said, no, we're not going to fall for that. You know the divide and conquer rule. I've told you Ambazonians.
Divide and rule,
Ambazonians are too smart. We are not falling for that. We've said no, and it's not working. We are one. We are fighting the war together as one. We're building our nation together as one. We're going to bring our brains together and actually get the best of the best education, the best medical services, the best legal system, all the things that we've been craving for. We are going to put them in place. That's what we want. We're going to work for it. We are not lazy people. We are very hardworking. We're intelligent. We will make sure that it happens because our children deserve it. I want my great grandchildren to be happy and proud that we fought for them. We don't want our children to be slaves to La République du Cameroon because that's what we have been treated as all this time. I went to school in Yaoundé, that's in French Cameroon territory, and the French children used to call us les Anglais-fous. They used to mock at us, insult us. We don't want our children to go through that. We say no to that.
So the
biggest thing, sorry Steve, the biggest thing is that we are educated, we learn enough so that we know that a society needs to function on justice and equality.
I do agree with that. So I'll be wrong now if I say that at some point in future, even when the freedom is given to you, and the Ambazonians are given the independence of their state, at some point maybe Cameroon will ever be one state. Because once you've gone alone, suddenly you may realize, I think if we probably have worked together as one Cameroon. So there can never be that opportunity at all.
True.
Sifra, look at her, she's looking at me.
What you would Ambazonian people to do with
No, I'm saying
definitely not.
Over years to come.
No, it is not going to happen. Hell no.
It's
definitely not. Do you know what, Steve? At the beginning of this liberation struggle back in 2016, do you know that when the lawyers and the teachers were protesting on the street, that is what they were looking for? Just give us let's look at the terms of the federated state so that we can work in peace and harmony. But no, it didn't happen. After Paul Biya declared war on our people and shot our people, our innocent civilians with live bullets from those helicopters, that was the day Ambazonians say hell no.
We're coming towards the end of the show, and we have explored the future. We've explored, where, and now I can tell that it can never happen from the president's own mouth, so it can't happen.
Never.
Is there anything else that you feel the rest of the world and Africa can do to help? Because somewhere along
there is a lot of things that African countries and the rest of the world can do.
About £1 billion,
how much have they given? 10 trillion pounds even.
What are one of the two things that you go in for quickly? Because I probably wouldn't
Steve, we don't need £1 billion. we just need our independence, our country, and we will build it from nothing, because that's what we will achieve. We need to build our country.
If I have $1 billion, you don't want me to give it to you.
We need $1 billion.
We just want our independence.
So we need all the support. You know where our website is? Ambazonia, the website for Onmask, the Friends of British Southern Cameroon, and the government website. If you can share that with your audience, that would be wonderful. So they can reach us there.
It's been a privilege to interview, to talk to you both about Ambazonia, and I do hope that you win this struggle. And for viewers, thank you very, very much for being with us for this half hour or so on this program. And I hope you'll be together again next week for another edition of Africa Speaks. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.